hold up. Now a word for our sponsor, Raid Shadow Legends. It'd be like, what's going on? This is insane. How have you not managed to, just... Maybe American football has 100 times less people watching it, but just monetize it 100 times more. Come on, America.
Do you smell it? That smell. The kind of smelly smell. A smelly smell that smells smelly. Money!
Just before we get started with today's video, I will say that it's brought to you by Seed. More on them in just a bit. Hello everyone, welcome back to another episode of Brain Blaze. I am Blaze Boy, your host. What's up? What's up, Beijing? If you don't get that reference, that's okay. It's pretty niche. Just recommended in my YouTube feed was a video of Xi Jinping just saying, "What's up, Beijing?" Which means I've talked about this in a video before. Never mind, let's just move on. What happens here? Danny writes me a script, the biggest bribes in history. I'm going to read it. I'm going to add some commentary if I feel like it. I almost certainly will. You've been here before. Tell a friend, though. Be like, have you seen the show that is Brain Blaze? It's, no one knows what's going on. It's a mess. Simon keeps changing it. Why does he keep changing it? And then Sam afterwards is going to edit it. But look, the trifecta is still here. Me, Danny, and Sam. What is it? Yes, it's. I'm looking at my monitor and seeing it. Doesn't it? It looks like a heart. Aww.
I got you, homie.
We're talking about the biggest bribes in history. I said that, right? It must be such a nuisance when you're just trying to get on with your job and random people insist on throwing big sums of money at you for no reason whatsoever. Danny, I'm not sure if this is a dig at me and like sponsors. Because they do throw surprisingly large sums of money at me. I'm like, if someone had been like in the past, it's like, you're gonna get this much money to do that, I'd be like, okay. That sounds unbelievable.
Okay, throw me some numbers.
I know Simon always finds it to be incredibly distracting. I'm sure Kerry Khan and Michael Alexander from Virginia will be in complete agreement. From between 1979 and 2006, they worked as program managers for the United States Army Corps of Engineers. Oh, I see. I mean, I'm just getting it. I'm not getting bribed by these companies. At least I don't think. It turns out later on, it's like, no, Simon, those were all bribes. We can't pay you to talk about our products. Advertising's not a thing. It's just bribery. Oh, no. But if you work for the army and you're getting large sums of money that's not in your paycheck, it's a bit like, you're going to get in trouble. Isn't this going on right now? I read something about people. It was like army officers getting bribed with prostitutes. And I'm like, oh my God, you guys are in trouble.
How dare you call me a prostitute? But you are. You better say sorry.
Towards the end of their largely respectable careers, they were responsible for awarding multi-million-dollar government-funded contracts to IT companies. And they were good at their jobs. These two trusted individuals were left to work alone, unsupervised, and were frequently given the highest possible performance ratings. They're both now in prison. I wonder why. And it's simply because some of these contractors couldn't stop tipping them for the excellent services they were providing. Still, $20 million is a pretty generous tip. Good Lord, even by American standards. Yeah. I mean, America's also so confusing. Tipping in America is such a mystery. 20%.
I'm rich.
I've said this before, but you go to a restaurant in Europe and you look at the menu and it tells you this meal is going to be 11 euros. And you're like, cool. And the bill comes and it's 11 euros. And then you can add a tip on if you want to. Some countries, in Czech, there's not really even tipping. It's like, I typically tip because I'm British and we tip. But here, it's like they do this thing where you round up. So you might have like, let's say your bill arrives and it's like 470 crowns, which is what, I don't know, like 20 something bucks. And then it's like, so you just leave a 500. You just pay 500 or you'd leave a 500 note. You just round up to whatever it was, which is like less than 10% or whatever. So I would find that unusual, but that's how it works here.
We don't do that here.
20 million though. What's the tipping in America? Yeah, and tipping in America is like you go and it's like, yeah, this meal's like $12. And then you get the bill, it's like $70, and you're like, what the happened? And they're like, oh, well, there's tip. 20%. 25 if you're feeling generous. I don't know. It's probably not 25. That would be absurd. And then it's like, yeah, and what's this? Oh, well, that's sales tax. Why is that not included in the price? What the fuck? And what's that? Oh, that's hotel tax. What's that? That's extra duty. What's that? That's the... Well, we know you're not from here, so we added on a little bit extra charge. It's like, America, why? Why can't you just say how much costs? Of course, the truth of the matter is a little bit more complicated than that, and perhaps even crushingly predictable when you consider the highly influential position that these two chaps were in, and the fact that nobody was really keeping a close eye on exactly what they were doing. Over the course of 5 years, Kerry and Michael received over $20 million in bribes and kickbacks from contractors who were particularly keen to keep their names on those highly lucrative scraps of government paper. There was, here in Czech, and I'm sorry that I'm going to screw this up, but a few years ago, the health minister, literally the head, cabinet position health minister, he was he's in prison for 6 years or something because he was taking bribes from some company, and they found the police raided his house, and in his house they just found a wine box just fucking filled with cash, and his excuse was don't know how that got there. And the courts were like, yes, you did, and now you go to prison. The health minister.
Nope, stop talking, go to jail.
Not like some guy who works for the government in some, just lowly bureaucratic position in the military. As in, talks to the president, talks to the prime minister, dude. Mental. And that was only the tip of the iceberg. They also quite cleverly presented the Army Corps with grossly inflated invoices from contractors, which were paid without question and then funneled back into a network of secretive shell companies, allowing Kerry and Michael and several others accomplices to skim off the excess money and dump it into their own bank accounts. In scenes that could have been played out by Richard Pryor in Superman 3, the duo didn't exactly do a masterful job with their new found wealth. Don't want me talking about this there was a thing we made. Was it on this channel or there was another channel with the people abusing the COVID loans? And it's mate, or was it the loans or something? There was something like this where it's you were just a poor dude and now you have 7 Lamborghinis. Someone's going to be where'd you get those Lamborghinis?
Oh shit, I'm sorry.
I'm sure they must have been on a fairly good wage anyway, but that wouldn't explain the sudden purchase of new high-end luxury cars, the 21,000 Cartier watches, the snapping up of real estate, the new coffee shop in South Korea. What are you doing? And the strangely misguided investments into stocks, which were going absolutely nowhere except down. Apparently, Kerry also enjoyed high-end liquor and had mistresses in 3 different states and enjoyed the company of underage prostitutes. Uh-oh, sounds like you're going to prison for 2 reasons.
Why not? You're nothing but a prostitute. Go to hell.
Kerry was actually concerned that his own brother, who was in jail at the time on unrelated charges, might be the one to go squealing to the authorities, even after Kerry had been kind enough to pay him just under $400,000 in hush money. Yeah, he's in prison. You know what he wants more than $400,000? To get a deal with the authorities and get out of prison. And honestly, it sounds like you're a big bribery fish who they are gonna hunt down. During a taped conversation with his father, Kerry warned, if anything happens, you're losing a son because I'll kill that bastard myself. He makes a peep, he's going down. I have to find somebody locked up to shank him in there, he's going down. Oh my god, dude. You're some crazy Walter White motherfucker. You're gonna have your own brother killed in prison to cover up your crimes that are just about money?
You're goddamn right.
What the fuck? But in fact, it was a nervous accomplice working for one of the contractors who agreed to work with the FBI and wear a wire, which would ensure the conviction of these 2 former program managers who were diverting taxpayers' money away from the troops. Just in time, too, as they were on the verge of steering a $780 million government contract to a favored company, which would naturally come packaged with more than a few personal perks. Guys, how the do you think you're going to get away with this Michael Alexander was sentenced to 6 years in prison, while Kerry Khan copped to no less than 19 years as he played a bigger role in one of the biggest domestic bribery scandals ever witnessed in federal contracting. Wait, who was the guy who was sleeping with underage prostitutes? Because neither of these are long enough for that. Because you're a pedo. What the f***? And you stole money from the government. The federal judge remarked you made history for the wrong reasons. Fair point, but the sentence might still be a little harsh considering that when it comes to the bountiful ballpark of barefaced bent business bribery, Kerry and Michael's exploits seem relatively light on ammunition. Wait, these guys are the lighter ones? Holy where are we going today, Danny? Alright, just before we continue with today's video, it's time for me to tell you about today's fantastic sponsor, Seed. Alright, it's time for a bit of science. What's a symbiotic? And why might you need it in your life? Now, look, you've probably heard of probiotics. You certainly have. They seem to be plastered over every bloody yogurt. Probiotic this, probiotic that. You've seen it in stores, and now those are good for you. It's a good thing. Everyone loves those. The problem, though, is that they're not very heavily regulated. Feels like to nobody's surprise at all. Especially in America. Yeah, I mean, Europe I feel was slightly better at regulating things, but also not brilliant. So lots of people get away with calling stuff a probiotic when it's not really a probiotic. So along comes Seed, which doesn't just make a good, true probiotic. They want to completely revolutionize the industry and invest in a more sustainable world. So they put tons of resources in developing something called a synbiotic. Now look, the science here, looked into it. They were like really strict about me looking into it. You got to look into it. You got to take this quiz. And I'm like, okay. But the idea is if you want a probiotic to be most effective, you have to sort of prime your gut with bacteria called a prebiotic. And when you combine those two things together, a prebiotic and a probiotic, you get, what do you get? Obviously, you get a synbiotic, don't you? So that is essentially what Seed is offering here. This is a symbiotic with 24 clinically scientific studied strains that support your gut health, skin health, heart health, and so much more. And because Seed is very committed to sustainable economic action, all the packaging they send you is completely compostable, biodegradable, and recyclable. And it also looks cool. It's all like glass and it's frosted and looks awesome. Right now, my viewers can get 15% off their first month's supply of a daily symbiotic by clicking the link in the description box below and using the code BRAINBLAZE at checkout. And now back to today's video. The Duke of Cambridge, the serving UK Prime Minister, and a British soccer legend walk into a bar in Zurich. This is not meant to be the beginning of a crap joke, although it does have a pretty expensive punchline. To be more precise, the bar in Zurich was the headquarters of the Fédération Internationale de Football Association, more commonly known as FIFA. Oh, I vaguely remember this. There was some bribery with the FIFA people, right? And the occasion in 2010 was the highly anticipated results of the member nation votes that would decide which countries had been granted the honor of hosting the World Cup tournaments in 2018 and 2022. Isn't it like, I know so little about football. I had no idea there was a World Cup this year. Absolutely nothing. Like, genuinely, sometimes I'll just play it up, I'll ham it up because it's, amusing, to me at least. To be like, it's the Olympics? The Olympics are going on? What? News to me. But I had literally no idea there was World Cup this year. None. Prince William, David Cameron, and David Beckham turned up to the lavish event in support of England's bid for the 2018 tournament. I don't think these guys got in trouble for bribery, did they? I feel like I'd know if these three extremely famous people were doing some bribery. That would be bigger news that I would have heard of. A bid which cost a reported £21 million to put together. And the unlikely trio were feeling pretty confident. Apparently, every official they had spoken to from every corner of the globe had promised that their country would vote for England. Oh, I see. The other side are going to have bribes who allegedly, I'm not sure yet, this is just my opinion, my guessing, please don't, I'm just guessing that whoever the other side is, they're going to have bribed them, and then David Cameron and Beckham and the other dude are going to be like, what the f***? What the f***? And they'll be like, well, we didn't get your bribery money, did we, lads? Like, motherfuckers.
Why did you?
You're nuts. I wouldn't.
And I also feel we didn't have the World Cup in England in 2018 or 2022, because then I feel like I even me, who doesn't give a about any of this stuff, would have heard of that. So they're understandably a little bit gutted when Russia swept to victory. Oh, it had to be Russia of all the countries that was going to do bribing. I'm like, well, it's going to be, it's going to be somewhere in the Middle East or Russia. It's going to be one of those countries, right? With a bit too much oil money. Whilst England's garnered a pretty pathetic and downright embarrassing total of just 2 votes. Apart from anything else, it meant that nearly everyone had been lying to them. David Beckham later wailed to British Prime Minister David Cameron, "I can cope with being lied to, David, but I can't cope with people lying to the Prime Minister and the future King." It's terrible. England was clearly doing it all wrong, though. They would have been far better off sneakily shoveling their £21 million into the pockets of every official they happened to bump into at a bar. I know that Americans couldn't really give a shit about soccer. Savor this guy. But FIFA is still the international governing body of the most lucrative sporting event in the world, which makes even the Olympics look a bit like a quiet Sunday afternoon down at the bowling green. So it's a shame that the world's... How come it's not an American sport? Because football is obviously more internationally popular. But when it comes to commercializing I saw an American football game once on TV. I think I was in a hotel in America and I was like, I'm going to watch this, see what it's about. It's insane. They have timeouts for adverts. Can you imagine that in soccer? Be like, hold up. Now a word for our sponsor, Raid Shadow Legends. They'd be like, what's going on? This is insane. How have you not managed to maybe American football has 100 times less people watching it, but just monetize it 100 times more. Come on, America.
Do you smell it? That smell. The kind of smelly smell. A smelly smell that smells smelly. Money!
So it's a shame that the World Cup was governed by an organisation which was allegedly one of the most corrupt membership clubs ever to be formed. Holy shit. Really excited to see how much money we're talking about here. Although there had long been suspicion and controversy over Joseph Sepp Blatter's 17-year reign as president of FIFA between 1998 and 2015, it took a much smaller and largely unrelated investigation to unravel and snowball into something which would blow the corruption wide open. Chuck Blazer was a former FIFA official and American soccer administrator who was under investigation by the FBI for failure to file personal income tax returns. America's going to blow open the case on football. Let's see how it goes. When the charges against him grew more serious and entered the realms of fraud, conspiracy, and money laundering, Chuck decided to bypass a potential 20-year sentence by turning informant and making secret recordings of his dodgy meetings with FIFA officials.
Why did you betray me, Inuyasha? What's going on?
Chuck had already alleged that the 1991 World Cup had seen FIFA score a total of $150 million in bribes and kickbacks from marketing firms who were keen to acquire exclusive broadcasting rights. Marketing kickbacks sounds a lot like bribes, allegedly, when it's $150 million. And by the time the investigation had really got going in 2015, several FIFA officials were getting arrested at the organization's Congress in Zurich, facing charges of bribery, money laundering, and racketeering. It was alleged that the whole voting process for the hosting of those 2018 and 2022 World Cups awarded to Russia and Qatar... What did I say? Was a comical farce in which millions of dollars were exchanged between officials and countries in order to secure votes. 79-year-old Sepp Blatter had surprisingly just been re-elected for a fifth term as president at a time when the organization was supposedly looking for new blood, such as, say, the then Union of European Football Association's president Michael Platini, who mysteriously dropped from the race despite being a front-runner. Allegedly. Blatter resigned just days after his re-election in the wake of the scandalous revelations, but denied any wrongdoing on his part and blamed everything on sour grapes from England and the US, had just been upset about not winning their respective bids for the 2018 and 2022 tournaments. Isn't it a bit late to be claiming that? We're already down the rabbit hole of bribery here, mate. He certainly wasn't squeaky clean, though. Blatter had long been accused of using FIFA development money, which was meant to be spent on promoting soccer in poorer nations, to further his own career and keep himself top dog. And it turns out that Michael Platini had only withdrawn from the race for the presidency shortly after Blatter had sent him £1.3 million worth of FIFA money. It's so insane. This would be like the president or prime minister or whatever using government money to pay off his opponents to not run against him. That's some dictator shit right there. FIFA's ethics committee banned Blatter from the organization for 6 years following what they viewed to be a disloyal payment. How is he not being banned for life and getting reported to the authorities for fraud? That is mental. He was later banned for a further 6 years following a probe into ridiculous bonus payments and fined the equivalent of just under $1 million. Although investigations are still ongoing, 8 defendants with links to FIFA have already pled guilty under seal and agreed to forfeit a total of $20 million between them. Since the scandal, FIFA has pledged to remove the corruption at the rotten core of the organization, but perhaps more fundamental problems still need to be addressed. In its present state, FIFA is not a business or a government agency. It's more of a multi-billion-dollar private members club with very little accountability to anybody. It's little wonder they've been getting away with so much for so many years. Oh, I see. Because, who are you defrauding? Well, where's the money come from? How can you just have a club? You must have to have some legal structure. Surely. That's mad. And if only Chuck Blazer had bothered to pay his taxes on time, 86-year-old Sepp Blatter would probably still be president and the 2026 World Cup would be held in North Korea. Brilliant. Craftily engineering work.
We've got to have money.
One or two sneaky little unofficial bribes here and there might not raise too many crooked eyebrows in the world of corporate company corporations. This is the longest ongoing joke in Brain Blaze history. I read, there was a script Danny delivered really early on, was corporate companies. And I was like, Danny, what other sort of companies are there? And since then, it's been corporate company corporations, which is awesome and easy to say. But in the case of Siemens, bribery appeared to be at the very heart of the business strategy. The German engineering business had been around for 175 years, and during the 20th century, the mighty conglomerate grew into the biggest engineering firm in Europe, specializing in infrastructure, telecommunications, energy, and medical equipment. Some have alleged that Siemens turned to bribery as a standard operating procedure after the company was ravaged following the Second World War, and playing fair no longer seemed to be a viable option for survival. Then you don't survive, Siemens, do you? Unfortunately, your business is not viable. Although Siemens is totally still around, so I guess everything works out for them in the end. Brilliant.
I'm not leaving. I'm not fucking leaving!
But the funny thing is that for the next 5 decades, they wouldn't even have been breaking the German law anyway. Right up until 1999, it was technically legal in Germany for a company to bribe foreign officials and mark it down as a tax-deductible expense. Holy shit. How? When the country finally toughened up its bribery laws in line with most of the rest of the world, this presented Siemens with a bit of a problem. After much head-scratching and beard-tugging, they eventually seemed to reach a decision which involved carrying on as before and hoping that nobody would really notice. But Siemens certainly didn't do things by halves. From between around 1999 and 2007, the company was throwing money at government officials and civil servants across 4 continents like it was confetti. They gave Saddam Hussein and his chums a total of $1.7 million to secure lucrative contracts in Iraq. This was legal? I mean, look, Siemens doing a company doing like this, I fully understand, because companies have loyalty to their shareholders, and if they think they're not going to get caught, then they'll do it, won't they? It's understandable. They're companies. But for this to be legal before 1999 is mental. They secured a mobile phone contract in Bangladesh following a $5 million bribe, and a contract to supply medical equipment to China following a generous $14 million donation. A contract then to build rail lines in Venezuela came after a $16 million bribe, and a contract to build power plants in Israel, which was bought for $20 million. This is wild. They also secured a $1 billion contract to produce national identity cards for Argentina, but curiously, the contract was only signed after the Argentinian president had received a gift of $40 million. In total, it's believed that Siemens paid out a staggering $1.4 billion in bribes in the space of less than a decade, in an operation which was described as being unprecedented in scale and geographic reach.
How much do you want for it?
Much of the money was funneled through secret accounts, slush funds, or carried out in suitcases. Former executive Reinhard Cecasek reckons that this telephone network division alone was granted an unofficial bribery budget of around $50 million a year, and that the company hired no less than 2,700 local consultants who were hired purely on their inside knowledge of local bribery customs. Like, what do you do? I consult with a large conglomerate on how to bribe our local officials. One of our favorite tricks is money inside an envelope. Cash money dollars.
Here comes the money.
Here we go. Money talk.
Here comes the money.
Of course, this is all a bit naughty. It wasn't just that Siemens was paying for an unfair advantage over their business competitors. The rigged deals also meant that local residents of poorer countries were paying way over the odds for hospitals, roads, power plants, and the most basic of services. Obviously, that's the bigger concern. After prosecutors in Italy, Liechtenstein, and Switzerland raised suspicion over dodgy business practices, Germany opened an investigation in 2005, which was followed up by a separate US investigation in 2006, launched on the basis that Siemens shares were traded on the New York Stock Exchange. Siemens initially tried to make out that the bribery was conducted by a few rogue individuals within the organization. Those guys got shafted. And they'll just be like, guys, this is how we've always done it. You told us it was fine. And it's like, unfortunately, you're what we describe as a scapegoat, Michael.
You gonna fuck on me?
That supposed rogue individual, Richard Cecasek, cops for a lenient $170,000 fine and 2 years probation, largely because he cooperated fully with the investigation. He snitched on everyone else. The company ultimately pled guilty to violating accounting practices and was fined $800 million by German authorities and fined another $800 million by US authorities. That is huge. On top of that, they were ordered to spend a further $1 billion on internal investigations and reforms, making a grand payout of $2.6 billion. I have no idea how much money Siemens makes, but I feel that's gonna hurt. Interestingly, they're allowed to plead guilty to accounting violations rather than explicit bribe, as this would have banned Siemens from bidding on US government contracts. Can you imagine that? It's like, yeah, no, I bribed someone. It's not a bribe, though. It's a, what was it called? Accounting violation. And it wasn't all bad news for Siemens. $2.6 billion might sound a bit wince-inducing, but they'd apparently been expected to pay out close to $5 billion. They just had a fund ready to do it. Like, didn't VW allegedly just keep a lot of money in supply in case that Dieselgate thing or whatever it was came out? These days, Siemens has been completely overhauled from top to bottom and is now, ironically, one of the most trustworthy and financially transparent companies in the world. There's still hope for Enron. Not really, Enron is long gone. Long gone. This is the end of the video. Thank you for watching.
Nope, stop talking, go to jail.